For the brush tool exercise, go to Illustrator, create a new document. Go ahead and just use 8.5 by 11, use a standard letter, one artboard, and then create. Illustrator's brush tool, which is what we're going to be using today, is very similar to Photoshop's brush tool. It looks similar in terms of the icon. When I hover over it, oh, sorry, it's going to be the paintbrush tool, not the brush tool, paintbrush tool. Click on it, and just like you would in Photoshop, you can just start painting and drawing. It's going to naturally, though, smooth out. The other added bonus of this being Illustrator and this being a vector program versus Photoshop is that all of this path has anchor points. So if I were to click on the selection tool, I can select this path, right? So, you know, like anything else in Illustrator, if I click on the direct selection tool, I can see all of the anchor points. So if I don't like this curve, and I'm going to go ahead and Control+ to zoom in on this. If I don't like this curve, just like any other path that you've used before, if you click on the anchor point, it gives you handles and you can adjust this. Sometimes, because this is auto instead of the pen tool, which is you kind of doing it yourself, you might end up with too many anchor points. So just like you would with the pen tool, I can go to the pen tool and I can delete an anchor point. So I can get rid of this anchor point. I could get rid of that anchor point. Oh, have to click on the anchor point. Now this isn't curved anymore, so I would go back to the direct selection tool. I can mess with the handle, but it's going to give me a smoother curve because I'm not encountering a whole bunch of other anchor points that throw the curve off a little bit. I can also add anchor points, just like I would on any other path. And I can also, like any other path, go to the anchor point tool, and if I have an angle as opposed to a curve, I can adjust it. I can also move anchor points just like I would with any other tool as well. So I can make this a longer curve, etc., etc. So that's the first part. Step one of your exercise is just to make a line, kind of play with it, you know, see what you can do, see how things are affected. Your second task is to make a second line. So again, using the paintbrush tool, I can make whatever line, doesn't matter what it looks like. I'm going to go to the selection tool and select this path. And now I'm going to open up some more options. So in my panels over here, I'm going to go to the brushes panel. And there's a few basic ones, but more interesting is that you can go to the brush libraries menu. And you can take a look at any of these. You could get arrows. The ones that I find most interesting, though, are the artistic ones. So a few of these, like, again, you can play with. I think ink, paintbrush, watercolor are maybe going to be a little more interesting. But again, go through, you can kind of play with it, see what you want to look at. You can definitely look at some of the other ones. The bristle brush library borders are going to tend to look a little more like this. And brushes for the artistic side are going to tend to look more like this. So for example, if I go to the ink ones and I can drag this down and make it bigger, I have all of these options. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this one, and all of a sudden I have a completely different looking line. It added into my brushes panel, so I can go back to it again. I can also, within the artistic ink, go to my 3 lines and add all of them to brushes, or I might only add that one. I might have to select more to add to the brushes to be able to use them again. If I want this out of my way after I've gotten my brushes, I can go ahead and close it. I still have Again, the same options in terms of I can change the color, I can change the stroke size, so I can make this a lot thicker, get a little more interesting line quality to it. I can change the opacity of it. So I can still use all of those options. With the paintbrushes, I also have the option of adjusting the stroke because it is just a path with a stroke on it. Some of the caps or corners may not work, but the profiles might. So I can change my line a little bit depending on what the profile is. So a lot of it's just playing, figuring out what you want. But for your exercise, you're gonna do just 5 different lines. One just with the straight paintbrush tool, and then 4 more with the paintbrush tool, but affecting the type of brush that it is, just so you can have a controlled space in which to try out the brushes. See what's available to you. Kind of think about your poster as you do it, you know, what might be useful to you. When you finish, like you've done before, File, Export, Export As, save it as a JPEG, save it as last name underscore first name underscore brushes. Put it somewhere where you will find it again. Make sure it's a JPEG, say use artboards, and then you'll turn it in on Google Classroom. But rewinding a second, resolution 300, click OK, and then turn it in on Google Classroom.